everyone, and welcome to the second episode in my Materialize CSS miniseries. Now, in this video, we're going to be covering the concept of grid using Materialize. And don't confuse this with the CSS native grid system. This one is a little bit different. It has its own pros and cons, which I'm about to go into. But basically, the gist of the grid system in Materialize is that it's based purely on a 12-column layout, so that you can't actually change the number of columns. It's always 12 columns across the website. And this creates for the ability to very, very quickly prototype layouts using Materialize. Like, you can build a simple layout very quickly, but something like this may not be as easy to create, or this, using building complex looking layouts with a high degree of kind of specificity as to what they look like may be a little bit hard in Materialize using its grid system. So, I'll forewarn, just for simple layouts, this is perfectly fine and it's very quick. But if you need a high degree of customizability on your layout, I highly recommend just using the native CSS grid system and or the Flexbox system. And of course, you can use these in tangent with the Materialize, just the rest of Materialize, which Materialize does have quite a few things to offer, which are very, very useful. So I'm going to go ahead and start up this start this up by opening up our index.html and hitting the Go Live button. As you can see in the last episode, we used the blue text class, the green class, and the red class to kind of give our text in our divs color, which is pretty cool. To give you more context on that, I'll open up the Materialize site here. And you can always reference here. You just go under CSS and go to color, and you can see all the different colors that Materialize offers. Now, of course, if these aren't enough for you, if you need a very different color, you can always just use vanilla CSS, and that's one of the greatest things. With both Tailwind and Materialize, if you really, really want, you can always mix vanilla CSS with this framework. I think Materialize integrates a little bit better, since with a Tailwind site, you might get confused. Like, I honestly think if you're building a Materialize site, you will have to override some of their default styles with your own CSS, but Tailwind really is an all-in-one solution for a lot of things. So, I think this library lends itself a little bit better to mixing vanilla and Materialize CSS. So in this episode, like I said, we'll be talking about grid, and the grid does have a 12-column layout, like I said. Normally, these 12 columns will be spread out across your website, the size of your website, and you can use something like this to actually use it. So I'll go ahead and show this by pasting it into our site, and I will be removing this just to stop any confusion. And I'll paste this here, I'll format it, and as you can see here, we have a row with 12 columns. It's numbered 1 through 12, and if we give each and every one of these columns like a red background, and then we gave like every other one maybe a green background, you'll see here that it's red, green, red, green, red, green. So this is kind of the size of all of the columns in Materialize, and there is no other like length of columns. You can only ever use 12. If I add another one here and make it green, it will of course just be added to the next row, and we can bring it back to 1 like that. So that is the gist of how you can actually do positioning with the Materialize grid system. There are a bunch of different utility classes like offset, push, pull, and then there's responsiveness that you can add. So I'll kind of show you what offset is. So for any given offset, let's just say I wanted to offset this one, -S1. What it will do is whenever you offset something, it will push it over to the next row. So look at this 2 with the green here. If I said offset -S1, and what it'll do is it will basically push itself over one row or one column, basically. So this 2 here used to be sitting here, but now it pushed itself over, and actually the 12 got pushed over to the next column. So that's how you can kind of create gaps in your kind of grid. Now, what happens if you add an offset to an 11 here? For example, this 11 red. If I add an offset -S1 here, notice that it will actually get pushed over to the next row since it's the last item, and it will get an offset of S1. And same thing, if I do this to the 10 here and I add an offset maybe dash S2, it'll push it over to the next row, add 2 offset, and then after that, this 11 will have 1 offset. And basically, that's how you can offset things. And in addition to offsetting, you can actually move your grid items around. For example, let's just say this one green one right here, I wanted to move over to this empty space. I can use a class called pull, which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can add pull-S5. So I can pull this thing, S5, meaning move it 5 spaces, and it will move it over right here. And of course, let's just say I wanted to move this 10 over right here into this 11 spot. Well, I can come here to the 10, and I can say push-S1, and that will push it over 1 space to be next to this 11. And this allows us to kind of really, really customize the way our grids look in Materialize. Now, in addition to offset, push, pull, there are responsive classes. And you probably didn't notice, but notice that there is an S here in front of everything that we're doing. And what S means is it means on small screens and up. So on every screen, basically. But there's actually another thing you can add, which is M. You can, of course, add M for medium screens and up. And let's just say I wanted to make this 4 on M and on medium screens and up. So I'm going to make this small. And whoops, I will, let me just minimize these. There we go. And so again, I can make this 4 on medium screens and up. If I save this, notice it's still 1 column right here. But when I make it a medium screen, notice that this 1 will actually grow to become 4 columns. But then also notice that this pull is no longer working. And the reason for that is this pull will only apply for when this is a small screen. So I can add another pull for M dash M. And then let's just say we want to pull it 1, 2, 3, 4. M4. It will cover basically those items. But let's just say I wanted to make it like M7. M6. So now we have the one here that's kind of pulling over to do to cover those. So yeah, that's push, pull, don't apply in every situation. Nor does offset. Offset will also not apply if you're not on a small screen, if you're using S. So if we also wanted to add an offset, offset dash M5, M4, and then instead of pulling M6, we can just have the offset. So notice there's 4 items here, and since this was the last item, it got pushed over to the next row, and then it got offsetted by 4 columns. So yeah, again, this is how we can create basically any layout that we want. And that's how we can make them responsive, by using M, and then you can also use L for large screens, like L5. And if I make this a large screen, it will just grow, be back here, and it'll be taking up 5 columns. So yeah, that's, again, there's a bunch of customizability. As you can see, we're making this grid layout change quite a bit as we change the size of our screen. And of course, you don't have to make it change like this. You can make it so that text is easier to read, or your buttons are easier to read when you're on a small screen. And they are a little bit, they don't take up as much room when they are on a large screen. Stuff like that is basically what you can do with this grid system. So I think that was pretty much all I had to cover in this video. If you want to see more like this, and as I cover the rest of the Materialize kind of framework, because there is quite a lot to talk about. There's shadows, there's media, there's tables, transitions, and of course there's a bunch of other stuff, like there's a built-in navbar system, there's badges, buttons. I'm not going to read off of this, but there's quite a bit that you can do here. So I'll be covering most of this in this tutorial series, just because it's very easy to use. Basically, you just add some classes and it's all set to go for the most part. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications whenever I post new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.